Okay, I'm going to tell you the truth about the number 24. Of course, Branch Rickey that hired Jackie Robinson, number 42, came from my hometown in Portsmouth, Ohio. It's got a big picture on the flood wall. If you ever have lived in a river town, you may have seen the flood walls that are now decorated by art, and they make a big mural of Branch Rickey, who was from Portsmouth, Ohio, who hired Jackie Robinson, the first black baseball player. So it has been reported recently by others doing gematria that the number 42 is meant to mark black people. Let's see if they've got a point here, or what is the real truth of 42 and 24. You notice they do reverse it because Kobe Bryant is 24, and no one will doubt that. He's definitely a black man, wasn't he? Well, we've got the Gettysburg Address, which the gematria of Gettysburg Address, gematrinator.com, if you want to run the calculator, type it in for yourself, you'll see is 214. There's a rule called the Rule of Colel. The Rule of Colel allows you to take out a number or reduce a number by 1. So if you reduce this 1 to 0, there's your 24 again. So the Gettysburg Address is 214. Now you have Miles Morales from the most recent Into the Spider-Verse movie. And maybe a lot of people did notice this. If you know gematria, he fell off, and right beside him, where he fell off the building, a 4 and a 2 fell beside him. It's not a coincidence. That's Black Miles Morales replacing Spider-Man. It's interesting that he replaced somebody, isn't it? Kobe Bryant falls from 3rd to 4th place. He's killed in a helicopter crash. But now here's something interesting. The Confederacy was founded on February 4th, 2-4. It sounds like they're marking black people, doesn't it? But is 2-4-42 more than just marking black people? Yes. Yes, and so much more. Let's start by looking about how Valentine's Day mixes with the kill number 44. This is only one day before Valentine's Day. February 13 is one day before February 14. This is the reason it's so important to remember the Rule of Colel, which allows a number to be one off and mean the same thing. Here we see the 322 right here, days left in the year, but more importantly, the date 213 is the 44th day of the year, and kill equals 44 in gematria. So we see that 2-4, like 214 minus the 1, 2-4 is also 44. In an instance where you see the numbers 2-1-4, the Rule of Colel allows you to take off the 1, turn it into a 0. So consequently, 214 becomes 204, or simply reduces to 2-4. For example, look at the date of the Stoneman Douglas school shooting. Stoneman Douglas was on 2-1-4, 214, February 14. February is the 2nd day of the month. So that's where we get the 2 from, 2-1-4. So the number 214 reduces to 24. The 1 becomes a 0, and then you're left with 214. And the date 214 is, by the Rule of Colel, the same as 213, which we showed up here, which is the 44th day of the year, and is marked by the 322, or the skull. Skulls tend to mean death, okay? But this is the reason for the adaptation of the 322 by the Skull and Bones fraternity. Skull and Bones began as a fraternity of physicians. Skull and Bones didn't start at Yale. It started in Oregon. They were healers, not killers. But it has also been used by those orchestrating attacks. Consequently, the good Skull and Bones fraternity's name was hijacked by those wishing to blame attacks on the founders of our country, by our own politicians, good Americans. Remember, 911 was the number you used to call an ambulance, a healer. So 911 was the number you called, and 911 hijacked this number intentionally. That's why the CIA set up George Bush as a Skull and Bones member. Do you see the connection? Remember also that Jesus was buried at Golgotha, which means a place of a skull, according to the Gospel of John, chapter 19, verse 17. Oh, look at World War I in the movie that's playing right now in theaters as we make this video and write this blog. 1917. The place of the skull equals 44, like kill. Now, the date of the Parkland shooting in Florida is 2/14/18. And again, by the rule of Colel, we understand that the number 45, the 45th day of the year, reduces the 44, or not reduces, but is one off from 44, or the kill number. Now compare how the Parkland school shooting to the anniversary of the JFK shooting is 2 months, 23 days. 223 or 322 in reverse. There's also 320 days left in the year, very, very close to 322, as close as the puzzle would allow all the pieces to fit together by the people organizing this. Look how Kennedy fits into this puzzle. Now we see the recent murder of Saoirse Kennedy fits also. Saoirse Kennedy equals 214 in gematria. Now I ask you, was Saoirse Kennedy black? Were the Parkland school kids all black? So does 24 always just mark black people? Is that really the meaning? As others would misdirect you to believe? Hubbard. Sorry, I got a little cough there. Look now also at the Sandy Hook date. When was Sandy Hook? 12/14. Okay, again, use that rule of Colel and eliminate the ones. And you're left with 2 and 4. The Sandy Hook kids were not all black either. So if one uses the number 24 or 42 simplistically and assumes that it's used for the sole purpose of marking black people, what does one do with all the 24s and 42s in the following examples? Woman equals 24, blood equals 24, MK Ultra, which by the way is an Alex Jones misdirection, just like the false narrative of the Georgia Guidestones. Boy equals 42. We just had woman is 24, so boy is the opposite, 42. Okay, it's interesting, but you know, there's a lot more 42s and 24s that are boys and women who are not black. Waco, which is 42. Pizzagate, which is 42. You had a movie called Unit 42. The Hells Angels are all 42. Are they all black? So is 42 really marking black people? Now, oversimplifying gematria without considering the whole gamut of possibilities and ignoring purpose and intent is tantamount to misdirection. Purpose defines meaning when gematria is used. Having been misdirected myself by those who do this, I'm correcting the errors. For these reasons, among others, I no longer support the works of misdirection from others who use gematria, Hubbard, sorry about that cough again, to fool and misdirect you, ignoring entirely the purpose and intent of its users. Let's examine the real purpose of 4224. We have already discussed that the Confederate States were founded on 2/4. However, George Washington was born on 2/22. Now, a historic calendar change had changed the original date of his birth from 2/11. But now let's see if we can add. 2 plus 2 equals 4. So we have February 2 and 2 plus 2 is 4. 2, 4. Therefore, February is 2 and the 22nd is 4. When was Kennedy assassinated? On the reverse of 2/11. Remember the date, the calendar change. So you had 2/11, and the reverse was 11/22 when Kennedy was assassinated. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. You know, that's the 11 and the 22 I'm adding right here in the date of the Kennedy assassination. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. Now, I'm really astonished by the numbers of people who tell me this math is too complicated because we are literally adding 1 plus 1 and 2 plus 2. So take a chill pill and realize this isn't that complicated. So again, Kennedy is marked by the 2 and the 4, when he wasn't black. The baby pictures of Hugh Squire were marked by Dr. Towers with an II, which is 2, in Roman numerals, and IV, which is 4. He was already marked at birth by the 2-4 and the Twin Towers. For those older than me who remember the Milky the Clown back in the 1950s and 60s when milk was still being delivered straight to your door, Milky the Clown worked for the Twin Pines Dairy. The Twin Pines Dairy was marked in the show Back to the Future. Notice the upside-down 911 under Twin Pines Mall. This is straight a scene from Back to the Future. Now, Hughes family owned the van patents and the milk truck patents through which the Fuller family, which made Fuller transmissions. Milky the Clown delivered milk. He was the mascot or whatever for the milk truck company, Twin Pines. Milky's real name was Claire Cummins. Oh, that's the same family that made Cummins engines used in Mack trucks. Hugh dated Sylvia Cummins of the same family in 1984. Marty McFly in Back to the Future traveled back to the year 1985, which by the rule of Colell is the same as 1984, and arguably the most famous movie of all time that indicates the plans of the elitists is George Orwell's 1984. At the beginning of this blog, we referenced Kobe Bryant, who wore the number 24 and who died in a helicopter crash. Now, while talking on the phone directly to Hugh Squire, Mr. Tim McCormick committed suicide by crashing his helicopter into a building in New York City, visually marking the 9/11 attacks and marking other notables. Notice his helicopter wreck left 204 days left in the year. He committed suicide through a helicopter crash into the tower in New York City on June 10, 2019, which leaves 204 days left in the year. Minus the 0, that is 2-4 yet again. And of course, McCormick was not black. Now look at the gematria of Tim McCormick's name. Do you see it yet? That's right. It's George Washington's birthday and the date of the Kennedy assassination. In reverse. Get it? Okay, Do you think he might have been trying to make a point here, Mr. McCormick? People like Tim McCormick are literally killing themselves to give you the truth of 9/11, and that's no exaggeration. Tim McCormick was tying the Kennedy assassination to 9/11, and he was doing it while calling Hugh Squire on the telephone. Hugh's life connects the JFK assassination, the murder of Jimmy Hoffa, who, by the way, died when Hugh was 24 years old, and 9/11. As a 4-year-old boy, he was kidnapped and raped by the families of 5 governors and musicians in the basement of the family of former governor of Michigan, Osborne. The number 4 was always intended to mark Hugh for life, but obviously it's not the only person who was ever marked by it. Rather, the 4 and the 2 have been marking those whom the pedophile gangs and the pedo-elitists have wished to mark, rape, and kill for a common purpose. This agenda was thought up and is being implemented by the Electoral College, and by that I mean the people like college professors who meet and decide who's going to run for office and who will be nominated to high political positions. By carefully marking, raping, killing, and replacing the descendants and the heritage of those who rebelled against the King of England in 1776, the Queen and her pedo empire has begun to flourish. Let me make this more clear. The Civil War was about the Revolutionary War. The endless murders of the Davis family, such as Delia Davis, marked the Civil War's Jefferson Davis. And yes, they were black people who were murdered, but the Civil War happened as a pedo-Catholic pope agreed to help the South and to murder Lincoln. Hugh's family was with Lincoln that day in Ford's Theater, the Harris family. Hugh's family also ran the Henry Ford Mansion, not coincidentally. When the gay, murderous, pedo-Catholic Pope puts a Kennedy in the White House, the last thing he wants is for the president to turn against him and expose that CIA and the child murders going on all over the country. Kennedy had to go. The last public thing Kennedy said before he was murdered was to the publishers, of which a young Hugh Squire was one, indicating that there is no place for secret societies. He was not referring to the Masons, but to the newly formed CIA, which was stopping his plans for invading Cuba and instituting a social list, notice that's 2 words, through its member Castro to spy on innocent Americans. Kennedy was murdered and replaced by the compliant Mr. Johnson. Those guys have a Johnson, don't they? And I'm sure that's just a coincidence, isn't it? The CIA/FBI blamed Oswald for the murder of JFK. Hugh confessed to a Father O'Donnell at St. Anne's Catholic Church in Michigan. The very same Father O'Donnell was cited in the Warren Report blaming Oswald for the assassination of JFK. It's no coincidence that Hugh is from Warren, Michigan, nor is it a coincidence that every news station heavily uses the O'Donnell family to report the news to you and keep Americans in a deluded state. Lawrence Francis O'Donnell of NBC even dons Hugh's middle name Francis, just as does the Pope Francis, which is by no means a coincidence. It was, by the way, Detroit's premier Catholic church, St. Mary Magdalene's, which recently was convicted and forced to pay the biggest payout in history for its massive pedophile involvement. But don't worry, the CIA has it under control. Nora O'Donnell of CBS, Kelly O'Donnell of NBC, Dan O'Donnell of radio's WISN, and Rosie O'Donnell of The View, which was started by Barbara Walters, who covered the JFK assassination with Walter Cronkite, is on the case. I'm sure Americans are certain to hear the truth now. As Johnson laughed and swore the oath of office, he ordered the CIA to murder the Duncan kids in the same area in Michigan in order to deflect attention from the murder of JFK. Hugh knew the Duncan family. It's not hard to figure out that Johnson was warning anyone in the Warren, Michigan/Warren Report area to not get involved and to allow the government to cover up its crimes. The pedophiles who murdered many kids in Oakland County, Michigan, and dumped their bodies on Hugh's property had now taken control of the government, and many more kids would die in the wake, including those on 9/11. 9/11 represented 2 towers marked for death, or 4. Remember, kill equals 44, and Hugh's baby pictures were signed by Dr. Towers and bore an II and IV, the Roman numerals for 2 and 4, on the back of them. The plan was already in place before construction even began on the World Trade Towers, which I believe started in '68. It represented the ongoing plan to mark the children of presidents. Hugh is related to Andrew Jackson and to Thomas Jefferson, and destroy America's true heritage. Compliant sodomites and victims of pedophiles now run your political theater, as you see Peter Buttigieg from South Bend run to your president to be your president now. The con is fully implemented. This sort of planning is vast. It's not the Freemasons and the Illuminati doing it. Those are the people who started your country and threw out the crown. It is, in fact, however, the crown, the pedo pope, and the gay political party and the college professors who are now replacing those who replaced them back in 1776. Oh, and did you notice that 7 times 6 equals 42?